Profuala, over to you.
Richard. So we're good. Hi, good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, partners, students, professionals, leaders, and friends joining us from Jamaica, the Caribbean, and around the world. My name is Lloyd Waller. I'm the director for the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute for Social and Economic Studies, SALISES, at the University of West Indies, Mona. On behalf of SALISES and our valued partner, Ardex Strategic Solutions, it's my great pleasure to welcome you today to today's virtual leadership presentation, Delivering Under Pressure, Building High-Performance Teams in Mission-Critical Environments. We're truly delighted to have with us today a presentation today that what promises to be a powerful and timely conversation on leadership, performance, resilience, and decision-making in moments when the stakes are high and the margin for error is very small. At SALISES, we are deeply committed to advancing research, policy dialogue, training, and thought leadership that respond to real-life development challenges facing Jamaica, the wider Caribbean, and the global South. As the institute at the University of the West Indies that does a lot of research, we have significantly contributed to the transition and the transformation and the enhancement and the future of the Caribbean. Across the Caribbean, SALISES continues to contribute to national and regional development by helping leaders, institutions, and communities better understand change, anticipate disruptions, and design practical responses for a more resilient and inclusive future for the Caribbean. That's why we're here today, actually. We live in an era defined by disruptions, uncertainty, information overload, and accelerated change. Whether we are confronting climate challenges, public health emergencies, cybercrime threats, economic shocks, or technological transformations, the leadership is an important aspect in terms of how to manage these activities, these challenges, these crises that many of us are now seeing ourselves having to manage. And the difference between success and failure, between resilience and collapse, often comes down to the quality of leadership exercise under pressure, to be quite frank. And around the world, leaders are being asked to make difficult decisions with incomplete information, managing increasingly complex systems, inspire confidence in certain times, and build capable performance at the highest level. And this is especially, this conversation is extremely timely. As a matter of fact, only last week, I was having a conversation with some young persons about leadership-related issues. And many of them essentially indicated that they were having difficulties in terms of understanding how to navigate the current transitions. I postulate that we're now going through what could perhaps be described as a fifth industrial revolution. And unlike the previous revolutions, what is happening with this industrial space, which I call a kind of symbiotic intelligence, where technology and humanity is working together for a greater good. In this particular space, as usual with social change, comes a lot of turbulence and a lot of trauma. And it's very difficult to, under normal circumstances, to be able to navigate that. But it's extremely difficult now with the overstimulation of information and the kind of accelerated transformation that is going on. So many persons are actually struggling to get an understanding of how to navigate that particular space, to be quite frank. So I'm especially happy to have Charlie with us today. And I don't need to explain to anyone that managing what Charlie does, it's rocket science, to be quite frank. You know, to manage all the different variables, the wind, speed, the people, the atmospheric. I mean, I tried to learn some of the jargons, Charlie, and it blew my mind. You know, and it's quite phenomenal that someone has that capability to put these variables together and understand how they operate and how they interact, to do something as phenomenal and fantastic as traveling to the stars, you know. And every Jamaican, I should think, is familiar with Artemis, because, you know, NASA did borrow the Caribbean space most recently. And for those of us who actually saw that magnificent image of that rocket, you know, just flying through, you know, it was phenomenal. And more so, it was a reminder that as human beings, we can do anything. So we're actually pleased to be partnering with Ardex Solutions, a firm who sits at the important intersection of strategy, institutional performance, governance, discipline execution. Ardex generally supports leaders and organizations in moving from ambition to implementation, and it helps institutions strengthen alignment, manage complexity, reduce delivery risk, and translate strategy into priorities and practical measurable outcomes. This makes Ardex a natural partner for someone like us here at SALISES and a natural partner in this conversation today. So thank you very much, Marjorie, Managing Director, who is also very phenomenal. I'm happy for this connection between SALISES and Ardex because, Ardex is going places. Marjorie, for those of you who don't know Marjorie is a change maker. Marjorie is a transformational leader, and Marjorie transforms leaders. So I'm excited to see what's next with Ardex, and like when I'm bigging up Marjorie, I'm now saying over to you to introduce Charlie.
Thank you so much, Lloyd, for that very warm introduction, and welcome everyone. It's so good to have you here with us. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Charlie, a sister, and just so grateful that she was able to make time in what I know is a very busy schedule, not because Artemis 2 has been launched. She really was wanting to share her experiences with us. And as Lloyd mentioned, this is really a learning session, and we hope that you'll have questions. We'll try and answer as many of them as we can. So without further ado, let me share a little bit about who is going to be presenting to you today. So Charlie Blackwell-Thompson serves as NASA's Artemis Launch Director, responsible for the overall planning and management of all Artemis launch countdown operations. As part of the Exploration Ground Systems EGS program at NASA's John F. Kennedy Space Center in Florida, she directed the countdown and liftoff for NASA's Artemis 1 mission in November 2022, and most recently led the launch operations of Artemis 2 on April 1, 2026, the first crewed mission to the moon in more than 50 years. Charlie, appointed to the position in January 2016, Blackwell-Thompson is NASA's first female launch director. She serves as the lead for the launch planning, guiding coordination and readiness efforts across the SLS, that's the Space Launch System, Orion, and EGS programs. In her role, she's responsible for developing launch countdown plans, operations philosophy, scrub turnaround procedures, schedules, and training frameworks that ensure mission success. Blackwell-Thompson holds multiple patents related to launch vehicle interface standardization and command and control systems. Her leadership and technical achievements have been recognized with numerous awards, including the prestigious Presidential Rank Award, the Distinguished Service Medal, two-time recipient of the Rotary National Award for Space Achievement, Stella Award, several Space Flight Awareness Team Awards. The astronaut presented Silver Snoopy for her work on the Hubble Space Telescope, the NASA Exceptional Achievement Medal, and the NASA Outstanding Leadership Medal. Charlie is a native of Gaffney, South Carolina. She graduated from Gaffney High School and Clemson University. She resides in Merritt Island, Florida, with her family. I now invite you, Charlie, to share your presentation with the audience. Thank you.
Oh, Marjorie, thank you for those kind words. And as Marjorie said, I'm Charlie Blackwell-Thompson. I am the Artemis Launch Director. I'm thrilled to be here today to be able to spend some time with you. One of my favorite things to do is to share with young people a little bit about Artemis and a little bit about my personal story, because, you know, I think Lloyd said in the beginning that human beings are capable of anything. And I think that is 100% correct. We can go ahead and flip to the next chart. I hope that many of you were at it. Launched on April 1st, and it was quite an amazing mission. And as part of this presentation, I'll share some of the imagery from that mission. But here's some imagery from my collection as part of the process of putting this rocket together, training our teams, rolling it out to the pad, and getting ready to go fly. And with that, we can go ahead and start the video in the next chart.
Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, on this historic mission, you take with you the heart of this Artemis team, the daring spirit of the American people and our partners across the globe, and the hopes and dreams of a new generation. Good luck. Godspeed, Artemis 2.
4, 3, 2,
Let's go.
1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
It was an amazing ride uphill. The views, we've got 2 moon rises that we've had so far, and the views of planet Earth. We've circled it completely, and we forgot how beautiful it is to look down on Earth. Humanity has once again shown what we are capable of, and it's your hopes for the future that carry us now on this journey around the moon.
You know, that video never gets old for me.
It never does.
And yet every time I hear it, sometimes it's hard to believe when I hear that voice with that send-off message to the crew. Sometimes it's still hard to believe that that voice belongs to me, and that I am in a place that I could be a part of that historic mission. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. But for now, I'll transition into how do you get this big rocket ready to go fly? So this photograph was taken as we got ready for what we call rollout, which means that we assembled this rocket over in the Vehicle Assembly Building, which I'm coming to you today from the Launch Control Center. The Vehicle Assembly Building is just to my right. It is the big, if you've ever visited Kennedy Space Center or seen the pictures on TV, it's the big building with the flag on it. We roll the mobile launcher, which is the platform, the gray part that you see at the bottom of the photograph here. We roll that in to the Vehicle Assembly Building, and we put this rocket together on the mobile launch platform. The boosters, which are the white segments with the NASA logo on the sides, they come in 5 segments, and they're stacked together. I don't want to simplify too much, almost, but like a Lego, where you're putting these different segments together. And then that middle part there, the orange part, is our core stage. Once the boosters are stacked, we mate the core stage. Up on top of that is the upper stage. And then up at the very top is the Orion spacecraft, and that's where our crews are on launch day. Once this vehicle is put together in the Vehicle Assembly Building, we do a series of tests to make sure that everything is working the way that it should. And once those series of tests are complete, we get ready for rolling out to the pad. Next chart. Here's a picture of our vehicle out at Launch Complex 39B, which is about 4 miles down the road. It rolls on what we call the crawler transporter. It'll pick up the mobile launch platform and it'll move over this 4-mile journey. It takes the greater part of an evening or greater part of about 8 to 12 hours to get out to the pad. Once we get to the launch pad, we have another series of tests that we'll do to make sure that this vehicle is ready to fly. And once those are complete, we'll get into our launch countdown operations. Here's a picture of our team from Firing Room 1. You know, sometimes I'm asked, what is it like on launch day in the Launch Control Center? And is it the same as every other day? And the answer is, launch day feels different than any other day. Not to take anything away from the days that precede it, but launch day is the day that you have been working for. You've been working towards as a team, as you built that rocket, as you tested it out, as you rolled to the pad, and you made those final preparations to go fly. And I often say that launch ops is a team sport because it takes all of us working together to get to launch to begin with. And then it takes all of this team on launch day. And this is just one small part of the team because there's also teams across the country that are supporting launch. The mission part of our team is from the Johnson Space Center and sit in mission control. And so you have this handoff between launch control and mission control at T0 or at launch. But it takes all of us working together, ensuring that our systems are ready to go fly, that the vehicle is ready, that the team is ready, and that the crew is ready. And so as we get into launch countdown, part of what you heard in that video was the poll, the launch director readiness poll, and then the send off to the crew. And so for Artemis 2, we get down to T-minus 10 minutes. That's our last hold point in the countdown. We will go through and verify that all of our systems are go and that we're ready to pick up that countdown clock and begin what we call terminal count. And that's a big decision point because once we get into terminal count, we have limited amount of time that we can resolve an issue and still launch that day because we're counting toward a T0 or a launch time. And then certain systems, once you get them in their flight ready state, they can only stay there for a certain period of time. And so between the milestones of T-minus 6 minutes and 1 minute 30 seconds, you have 3 minutes of hold time. So if we were to have an issue between 6 and 1 minute 30, we have 3 minutes to resolve that issue. And so being able to make decisions and make recommendations that are clear with clear paths forward on what we may need to do and whether we're go or no go is really critical. And so as we pick up that countdown clock at T-minus 10 minutes, it seems like it takes forever to get to 6 minutes, even though it's only 4 minutes of time. And if we were sitting here having a conversation, that 4 minutes would fly by. But on launch day, looking at the countdown clock, and I'm looking at one here in my office right now, as I look at the countdown clock and you watch those seconds tick off, it seems like it takes a really long time to get to 6 minutes. But once you get through 6 minutes, the firing room is really quiet. I mean, there's 100 engineers in the room, that everybody is focused on their work. They're focused on the thing that they're responsible for committing to go fly and ensuring that it stays in the launch ready state. And so the only voice that you hear is, you know, after that crew send-off message that you heard in the video where I said, you know, let's go, and all of the words that preceded that, let's go. And we picked up the count, and we counted down to 6, and it's perfectly quiet on the net, except for our ground launch sequencer operator who will call out certain milestones. And so you'll hear GLS is go for FTS on, and the countdown clock is at T-minus 5 minutes. And you'll count, you know, through getting your tanks pressurized, getting your flight systems ready to go. And APUs begin to spin up and your dynamic systems are coming online. You'll transfer power from the ground to the flight elements. And as you click through that milestone at 1 minute 30 seconds, now there's no hold time remaining between that and T0. And you'll hear the GLS operator enunciate GLS's go for core stage power transfer, and you'll go through that transfer to the flight elements. You'll get down to T-minus 33 seconds, and you're getting ready for that handoff between the ground software and the flight onboard software. And then down at 10 seconds, once again, you'll hear the call that you're go for core stage engine start. And at that point in time, shortly thereafter, you'll begin to get a stagger start on those engines, and then you're 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, booster ignition and liftoff. And during those months and weeks that are leading up to those last 10 minutes of count, there's preparation, there's planning, there's practice, all of that going into the readiness for inside of T-minus 10 minutes and any decisions that you have to make. And of course, on our Artemis 2 launch day, we got through terminal count without any issues or hiccups at all. It was perfectly beautiful watching the minutes and seconds tick off the countdown clock and watching the data and seeing nominal performance on that hardware as it began to come to life and get ready to go fly. Next chart. So this picture was taken as we were getting ready for our journey to the moon. And it was shortly after we made the decision for TLI, our translator injection burn. This was taken by our commander, Reed Weissman. And there are 2 photos from the mission that are in the package that I absolutely loved. I pulled 2 of my favorites. But I love this picture because this is our home planet. This is all of us. This picture has all of us in it. Maybe you can't see our faces, but we're absolutely all in this picture. And to me, it is that beautiful blue marble that's out in our universe, out in our solar system. And then when you dive into it, you can see up at the top, you can see the aurora kind of up on the right side up at the top. And then likewise, when you look at the bottom on the left, you can also see an indication of an aurora. So you got auroras at both poles. You can see the beautiful glow of the sunlight and of daylight around the planet. And it is just such a, I think, just such a wonderful picture of our home planet, and one that you only get from the perspective of space. And then equally as beautiful is this picture of the eclipse. And so this was captured by the crew, I think it was on April 6th. And to me, what is so beautiful about this is, the moon is blocking the sun, and it almost looks as if it is the same size. And they were in this eclipse, the totality, for almost an hour. I think it was 54 minutes. And so some of the imagery is just absolutely stunning. But there's also, I believe, a lesson in leadership in this picture as well, because yes, there's scientific observations here. You see the halo around the moon. You can see features that are different. But to me, one of the things that I love is because it's in darkness, you can also see points of light. You can see stars. You can see planets down at the bottom right of the picture. And those would not be visible if you weren't in darkness. They would almost get lost in the light. And so it is a wonderful reminder of how sometimes when we change our perspective, what we learn and what we see as a result of that. And then here's a picture at the end of the mission. So this was an incredibly successful mission. It was a 10-day mission, fulfilled all of the flight test objectives, and you know, was all about sending crew around the moon. We had done that since 1972. So it had been a really, really long time. And if you're not older than 50, you may not even remember the last time that we did this. So it was an incredible achievement, met all of the objectives of the flight. And then after those 10 days, we splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego. I was at the Mission Control Center for landing. I didn't have an active role in the landing operations. I worked launch ops, but I was there for the landing. And, I can remember, and as they're coming back home and you get to this entry interface, which is where you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. And that is a very dynamic, very turbulent part of the landing operations. And you lose signal with the crew for a short period of time. And I can remember sitting in MCC and, just like you watch on launch day as you're counting down to T0, we're watching that countdown to entry interface. And then they enter the atmosphere and you're without signal for a short period of time. And then when you reacquire that signal, you hear the Capcom, which is someone from the crew office, calls to the Integrity spacecraft, which is where our crew is, and says, "Integrity Houston." And it'll always be in my mind, that call that came back, back to Houston, that said, "Houston Integrity, we have you loud and clear." And at that point in time, you know that you're through one phase of the dynamic landing, and now you got to get on chutes and you got to splash down. And then you get the drogue parachutes that are deployed that begin to slow Orion down. And then sometime after that, you'll get the mains. That's what the picture that you see here, the beautiful red and white banner across the sky. And then the crew splashes down in the Pacific Ocean. And then shortly after that, they are retrieved by our landing and recovery team. So that was our mission. It was something incredibly special to be a part of. Next chart. And so what is essential for mission success? So we had this incredible mission, and there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, there are requirements, there's hardware, there's testing, there's training. But one of the key components to mission success is the team, and the team working together toward one goal, which is to meet the mission requirements, to meet the mission objectives, and to bring our crew home safely. Next chart. And so you might ask, well, was it without problems throughout? And the answer is no planning for a mission is ever problem-free. There are always things that you have to go work through. And one of the things that we had to work through in our wet dress rehearsal, which is a tanking event where we tank the vehicle, we count down in the countdown, but we know that we're not going to launch. It is not a planned launch day, but it is, we count down to test out all of the systems that we'll need on launch day. And on our wet dress rehearsal day, we had a hydrogen leak and we had to go fix that. But that's something, stand by just a second. Sorry about that. I am here in the Launch Control Center, and whenever we have any kind of weather in the area, we'll get a weather warning. So hopefully we won't get a re-announcement. But if so, I'll try to save you from the weather warnings. So we actually had a hydrogen leak during our wet dress rehearsal. And so we had to go in and figure out, why did we get the leak? What hardware did we need to change? How did we need to retest it? And how did we get back on the path to launch? And our team did that. And it was our training that led up to that, because when that leak occurred, we were actually in what we call term count of wet dress. We were down inside of the 6-minute mark when we were getting ready to pressurize the tanks, and we saw that we had a LH2 leak in the what we call the TSM, the tail service mass umbilical cavity, which is where your ground and flight plates come together on the vehicle. And so I shared this because, as you, regardless of whether you're talking about achievement of objectives as it relates to space, or whether you're talking about achievements of objectives as it relates to anything really, is that there are challenges sometimes in our path. And it really is about how we handle those challenges that ultimately lead us to meeting our goals and our objectives. Next chart. So some of the foundations of high performance teams, I don't think I'm telling you anything that you probably don't practice within the teams that you have, whether it is a sports team, a music team, a work team. It is all about trust. Trust really forms the foundation of any highly effective team. And that's really important in the work in the Launch Control Center, because when someone makes a recommendation, I have to trust that they have done their preparation, that their recommendation is sound. But that comes through practice, that comes through learning together, because it's not just, well, we're okay because I said we're okay. It's I'm okay because here's the data that goes with it. And we're all looking at that data at the same time. But trust is a huge part of an effective team. And communication is as well. And it's not just the communication when we have our headsets on launch day, but it's the communication in the months and even years that lead up to a mission. It's in defining what the mission is about and communicating with the team on those things. It's about understanding where we have challenges or shortfalls and how we address them. I used to work with a very wise man, and he would say that in communication, his grandfather had told him, you have one mouth and two ears because you're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. And I think that is such an important thing in communication, is listening. And sometimes it's one of those things that gets overlooked, but a really key ingredient is to listen. And as leaders, it's really important that we listen to those around us and we listen to our team, what their concerns are, what challenges there may be. And likewise, it's also important in that dialogue that you're communicating, priorities and how we may be going to move forward on a particular item. But that dialogue and that communication between team members is essential. And then I can't say enough about the power of the team. To achieve things like Artemis 2, it is not the work of a single person, a single crew member, a single launch director. It is all about the work of a team. And I borrowed this quote from Herb Brooks in Miracle on Ice, but the quote goes, we play for the name on the front of our jersey, not the name on the back. And so in launch ops, I'm not playing for Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, I'm playing for Artemis. And in the case of Artemis 2, I was playing for Artemis 2 and our crew and our mission. And I knew that everyone in that control center was doing the same thing. And then there's mentorship, because we come to a team with different experiences. We come to a team with different levels of expertise. And the beauty of a team is helping each other grow and helping each other learn. And as you help others, it doesn't diminish, your light, as the quote here, the candle loses nothing when it lights another. And that is so true. And in fact, as you light another and you light another, right, what an amazing glow that you can create as a leader. Next slide. So some of the things that high performing team means, right? One of the things that our team is very focused on is a goal and shared vision. And that shared vision is crew safety and mission success, whatever that mission is. It's establishing clear expectations within the team on who's responsible for what and what performance expectations look like. Because on watch day, the stakes are high and the performance bar is high also. But knowing that coming in and talking about it sets you up for success because you're practicing that expectation in every simulation. Feedback is a gift, and being open to feedback is essential when you're on the launch team. Because like I said, when we start training, we're not all at the same level or the same experience. And so we have to be able to talk about, did we do that right? How could we do it better? And even given one-on-one coaching and feedback with members in our team, both across the team and across the chain of command. But being open to feedback is a vital part of growing. And then knowing where your strengths are and working together to mitigate your weaknesses. And so when we do a simulation, which is one of our main training mechanisms for getting ready for launch, and we did 50 simulations in preparation for Artemis 2. And as we did them, in every single one, when we finished up, with everyone in the room, 100 people, we would talk about, how did we do? Did we meet the mark? Did we make a mistake? What could we do better? How could we communicate it better? Whatever the case may be, we would go through and take actions to know what did we do well and what could we do better? And how do we make sure that the things that we could do better, that we're seeing improvement? How do we keep metrics on that and ensure that we're getting better as a team? And then the other thing is just opportunities to practice, improve, and grow. That is an essential part of, if you think about a sports analogy, and you think about where a team is in say their training, when they go into spring training, and maybe where they get to, as they're playing through their season, and you get to the playoffs or the World Cup or the championship or the Super Bowl, whatever that big milestone is that you're working toward. If you look at where you started and where you finish, there's a lot of growth that happens along the way, and it's all because of that opportunity to practice, improve, and grow. Next chart. probably should have introduced that beforehand to say that, you know, Artemis 1 was about flying the SLS rocket and the Orion spacecraft around the moon without a crew. It was about testing out the flight hardware in the space environment. Artemis 2 added a crew, and it was about flying that crew around the moon and checking out the life support systems and the capabilities of the Orion spacecraft with a crew inside, something that you can't check fully without a crew. And then our next mission that the video was about is Artemis 3, and it is about docking, because before we land on the moon, we got to ensure that we can dock with the human lander systems. And so coming up in 2027 is our next mission, which is Artemis 3. Our crew was just announced last week. We're thrilled about that. And that mission will involve multiple launches. We'll have the SLS rocket, as shown in the picture with our crew. And then we'll also have the launch of 2 landers and docking demonstrations with them. So 2027 is going to be a very exciting year as we take that next step in this, you know, in the incremental capability, adding incremental capability in preparation for in 2028 landing on the moon. And so now I think we can take questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Charlie. I really appreciated that presentation. And, you know, I share what you said. I got goosebumps, you know, goosebumps when I saw that video too. I think the entire world, right? As we watched on April 1, you can't help but not get goosebumps. I have a question, but Lloyd, I didn't know if you're seeing any questions. I'd love for the audience to feel free to, don't be shy to ask Charlie any questions that you may have. You can put them in the chat. Not sure if we're seeing, but I can pose one in the meantime, Charlie, to kick off our conversation. You know, and I think about the team that's actually going to the moon or went to the moon and are preparing now to dock, right? How can Caribbean organizations, we're talking the universities, the public institutions, agencies, the private companies, better prepare their teams for disruption, uncertainty, and rapid change? Remember that we are a region that sits in a hurricane belt, Charlie. So 6 months out of every year, we pray that we don't get hurricane, but we know that we experienced Melissa last year. And from natural disasters, we are not as ahead with respect to technology compared to other countries, you know, the world. We're holding our own, but we still are not as, you know, as embracing technology as much as we should. And there is a lot of disruption with AI, with technology constantly creating disruption. What would your advice be, and how can we better prepare our teams for this type of disruption and uncertainty and just the rapid change that we're all experiencing globally?
So I can speak to how we prepare our team. One of the ways that we prepare our team for launch day, which can have uncertainty and can have challenges, is to think about those challenges, think about the things that could happen, that could go wrong, and we try to go through and have what we call a pre-plan for that, which means that we've thought through, what if this thing happens? What are we going to do? And we write it down. And I know that sounds really simple in a lot of ways, but going through the thought of, if I have, and I'll use an example from launch, you know, if I have this system and it leaks, what are we going to do? What valve am I going to close? What purge am I going to increase? And I know these aren't exactly, you know, one for one in what you're talking about, but I think the principle behind it is similar, which is that you're deliberate in your thinking about not only what happens when it goes right, but what happens when it doesn't, and what are the steps that I need to take, and am I prepared with those steps, and what are the tools that I need to have in place to go work through a problem, and whatever that problem is. And so I think those mechanics are pretty universally can be applied to challenges or issues, which is just, you always react to something better if you've thought about it in advance. And so that for us on the launch team is really key.
Thank you, Charlie. Lloyd, are you seeing any questions?
Yeah, we got
from you?
we got one question from Heather.
Okay.
It was actually text, 1 second, and the question was, what are the top 3 things that leaders should take into consideration when making any decision?
Top 3 things,
Top 3
Charlie, that
things to
leaders
take into
should
consideration.
take into consideration. What would you say?
The 3 things that leaders should take into consideration
In
what was the
decision
second part of
making,
this?
like
Decision-making,
as a leader
decision-making.
yourself, what are the top 3 things you think?
One for me is always the biggest one is, what is the data, right? What does the data tell me? And so, in the firing room, when I'm making decisions, it is, what does the data tell me? What is our experience with this in the past for launch ops? And really it is relying on your experts. And so I think that those things also apply. If I were to think about, that's a decision in the firing room, is the first thing I'm going to look at is, what are my requirements? What does my data say? What do my experts say? But if I step back and I'm here in my office and we're talking about something and I need to make a decision, it's the same things, right? It's, what does the data say? What are the requirements that I'm trying to meet? What are my guiding principles? And then, what are the experts say? And those experts could be people on your team. It could be people that, subject matter experts that you go to and that have a specialty in one particular area. It could be academia, right? It's what are the experts telling me? And then the other piece for me is always, you got to do your homework, and understanding, are seeking to understand the issues that you're trying to make a decision on.
Yes, I totally agree. I see a question from Jeanette who says, great presentation. How do you help the team leader who is clueless to navigate the change?
So, navigating change is a tough one. And there's some things that you always, I think, are always good practices for change. One is being open and communicative about why you're having to make a change, what that change is all about, why it's necessary. It's sharing that with the team. But there's also a piece of change that is so personal to each and every one of us. And so when you're dealing with a large team, it's also recognizing that, on this change continuum, we're each different. You'll have people on your team that are like, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's go. I'll jump into the change. I'm a leaper. I'm going to leap right into the change. And then you have, you have members of your team that may be on the other side of that, that need lots of data, that are, as one of the classes Marjorie and I took together, that are tradition holders, that really have to understand, why is this change necessary? And it takes quite a bit to get them to see why that's necessary. But what I would offer is that not just leapers and not just tradition holders and not, folks that are in the middle that are kind of bringing the two together, but it takes all of us to get through change together, because you need those tradition holders, right? They need to remind you that here's some of the pitfalls and here's some of the things you need to think about. But if you only had tradition holders, then as a team, you'd be very change averse. And so you need some of those other folks that are willing to kind of jump out there. And then you need the folks in the middle to kind of knit the two together. And so, when I think about change, there's so many levels to it. There's that personal piece of how do each and every member of your team process change, and what do they need, and how do they help you as a leader to make sure that you're considering all the different aspects of change. In the grander, bigger picture, it's communication is key when you're moving through change, and that is explaining why, explaining the vision and what it's going to bring you, and then listening to the inputs from others and making sure that those are addressed. To me, those are the key elements of moving through change.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you one question that I have for you regarding young professionals. What advice would you give to young professionals and emerging leaders who want to develop the confidence and discipline needed to lead under pressure? So imagine a young grad, what would that advice be? Because not everyone has those characteristics, has those traits immediately.
So the first thing I would say is, if you're a young person in this audience today and you're thinking, I wonder if I could do that, I'm going to tell you you can. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you, is that you 100% can do anything that you set your mind to, as long as you're willing to work for it. Leadership is learned, can be learned, and each and every one of you are capable of being an amazing leader. And so that's the first thing I would say, is that you're absolutely 100% capable of it. You can do it. It's the first thing. In terms of developing those skills, I would say seek feedback. One of the ways that you become a better leader is understanding what your strengths are, leveraging those strengths. It's also understanding the things that maybe aren't your strengths, and how do you mitigate those, or how do you get comfortable with those? Not everyone is. I'll give you an example of myself. So when I was a young woman, I gave a presentation once, and it was videotaped, and I heard it, and I remember saying, well, I'm never going to do that again, because I thought that I looked very stiff. I didn't like the way I sounded. There was just a whole bunch of things. I was 17 years old. So this is a long time ago. And now I can't imagine that, because a big part of what I do is talk to people and give presentations and other things. And so if I had listened to myself as that 11th grader, that I'm never going to do that again, how limiting that would have been for me. Instead, I sought some feedback a little bit later about how could I do that better. And I took a class and so my advice is seek feedback. And if there's something that you think you need to work on, don't be afraid. It's just like a sport, right? If you want to make a team and there's a skill that you need to work on, what do? You practice. You go practice it and you get better at it. And so leadership is exactly the same way. It's, figuring out, what do I need to work on, and working on it, and leveraging your strengths, getting feedback from someone that you trust that can provide you coaching and mentorship. And then sometimes you just have to flex into it, and even if it's like, I want to do it, but maybe I feel a little, uncomfortable raising my hand, sometimes you just have to raise your hand.
Thank you, Charlie. Almost like those 50 simulations you mentioned, right? That the team, each time. Now, there are a bunch of questions coming in, and I know that we're running out of time. So what I'm going to try to do is, a few of them center around leadership, and one has do with you in your role as first launch. So let me try and give all the leadership ones, try and not make it too long a question, but I'm going to merge them, combine them. So it's how do you incorporate risk management in your role? That's the first one. And in environments like NASA, where clear command is critical, does mentorship enhance leadership or risk diminishing it?
Okay, so I'm going to try to do these in pieces. So risk management is absolutely part of our culture here at NASA. Whenever we look at decisions, we look at the likelihood and the consequence of those various decisions, and we talk about risk in the decisions that we make. So it is absolutely part of what we do. And on launch day, you are balancing risk. I mean, there is risk to launching, there's risk to sitting on the ground, and you want to make sure that this vehicle before you go launch is absolutely 100% ready to go fly. And so in each of our launch commit criteria, those are those go, no-go rules that you'll hear me reference. There is a risk part of that that goes into that formulation of how much redundancy do we need to go launch? And that is in itself a risk assessment, right? So risk is a big part of what we do every day here, and it goes into all of our decisions when we formulate them, is to look at what we think the risk is associated with it. The mentorship, does it help a leader, or does it, I can't remember the characterization, but I would say mentorship 100%.
Or diminish it. Does it help or diminish it?
No, in my opinion, it helps because, I've mentored so many people. And in fact, when the session wraps up today, I have a mentor session with someone. And for everything that I give, I get back twofold, because I learn so much from them. Just as they're learning from me, I learn from them as well. Perhaps it's a new piece of technology that they're working with that I'm not familiar with because I'm from a different generation, or perhaps it's a perspective from the workforce that I'm not aware of. But all of those things, not only does it help mentor someone so they can reach their potential, but it also helps me be a better leader.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Well, this will be the final question to you because I know we're running out of time now. And this one is from Michelle. She's asking, what challenges did you face as the first woman launch director at NASA, and how did you overcome them? Did you feel the pressure to prove yourself differently than your male colleagues? So what challenges did you face?
So I don't know if I...
Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
So I don't know if I felt more than my male colleagues, but I will say that when you're starting a program from the beginning, like Artemis, you absolutely feel the gravity of what you're doing, the responsibility that you have, and that you're trying to build this from scratch. And so that certainly comes with a huge responsibility, and I certainly felt that. In terms of being the first woman launch director, I very rarely think about it that way. I mean, I know I am the first female launch director for NASA, so I know that's a factual thing. But when I come into work, I think about, what do we need to do to get ready for this sim? What do we need to do to get this vehicle ready to fly? Where are we at on our schedules? How are we performing to plan? Those are the same things that, regardless of gender, you would be thinking about as the launch director. And so it's hard to say if there was anything specific to being a female that made that different. But certainly getting ready for the first flight and then the first crewed flight, there's a huge sense of responsibility that comes with the job. And I certainly felt that.
Thank you, Charlie. Well, we're out of time. So, Charlie, any last words to our audience? There's several questions in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for your various questions. But I think we have to release Charlie. So I don't know, Lloyd, if you have any comments just before Charlie speaks.
No, man, the only the only question I'm asking is when do we get to travel to space from here in the Caribbean? I guess that's the only question.
Charlie.
The only thing I would say in closing is, again, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your afternoon. I hope that this little bit of talk about Artemis, I hope it inspired you. I know that this mission had a huge impact on those that followed along. I hope today has given you a little taste of that. And I hope if you walk away with nothing more than you can do whatever you choose to do. And our administrator, Jared Isaacman, in fact, I have a t-shirt that has this on it that says NASA was invented to do the near impossible. But the reason that people can do the near impossible is because they have the dedication of the team, and they have a vision, and they have a passion for what they do. And so I hope that each of you finds that passion that is inside you and finds the thing that makes your heart sing, like space ops and launch ops make mine sing.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, everyone. Thank you so very much. And thank you to Laura, who I know is supporting you in the background, for just giving us this time today and sharing your insights with us. And we wish you well in all your future launches.
Thank you very much, Marjorie. Thank you very much, Charlie, and thank you very much, Laura. I'd also like to thank the team at SALISES and Marjorie, your team at Ardex. This has certainly been a very eye-opening and fulfilling and inspirational discussion. You know, I think, Charlie, you know, who you are and what you do and the conversation and, you know, the connection between that kind of outer-worldly, almost impossible, and I won't say almost because we're there, almost impossible, and the mere fact that, you know, you're just so calm in your presentation and also very clear in terms of what we need to do to be able to deal with certain types of tasks or variables that may impact our decision-making process. And I did take the idea that data, I think he said it 6 different times in different ways, that data is perhaps one of the most critical aspects of deciding how you move, when to move, which direction to move in, and who to move with. And certainly that is something that we're all taking, you know, from you in 2026. Thank you very much to yourself and your team. Again, thank you very much, Marjorie. Thanks to the SALISES team, and thank you to the audience who you've taken some time of your busy day today. I know a lot of you are. I've seen a couple of you online. I know you're very busy, and I know we have competing events, World Cup, diaspora event, and other things. But I'm very thankful. I'm seeing people from South Africa. I'm seeing people from as far as Kenya. So, you know, we're very thankful at SALISES for you participating in this event today, and hopefully we should be able to promote and advertise another kind of leadership seminar, because we believe that it's an important aspect of development in terms of helping leaders to navigate the current challenges that exist in the world today. So thanks, everyone, and have a fantastic day and have a wonderful week. Take care. Thanks again, Charlie.
Take care, Charlie. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.